Hey everyone, welcome back to Yash Talks Cinema, where we dive deep into the stories that blend humor, humanity, and the unexpected moments that define great filmmaking. Today's spotlight is on The Survivors, a 1983 comedy that brings together two powerhouse performers, Robin Williams and Walter Matthau, in a hilarious yet thoughtful story about fear, survival, and the absurdity of modern life. With an IMDb rating of 5.8 out of 10, this film is a quirky gem that combines sharp social commentary with laugh-out-loud moments, proving that sometimes the best way to deal with chaos is through comedy. The story begins in New York City, where two very different men find themselves thrown together by fate. Donald Quinnell, played by the incomparable Robin Williams, is an idealistic and somewhat naive office worker who believes in the good of people until he's suddenly laid off from his job. On the other hand, Sonny Peluso, portrayed by the ever-grumpy but lovable Walter Matthau, runs a small gas station and has a more grounded, cynical view of the world. Their lives collide when both men become victims of a bizarre robbery, a random act that changes everything for them. From this moment, The Survivors becomes a clever character study wrapped in comedic chaos. After the robbery, Donald's world falls apart. He's shaken, paranoid, and convinced that society is collapsing around him. Meanwhile, Sonny tries to stay calm, believing it's just another bump in life's unpredictable road, but Donald's paranoia quickly grows out of control. He becomes obsessed with protecting himself and preparing for the worst. He starts reading survival manuals, stocking up on weapons, and dreaming about escaping civilization entirely. This is where the movie takes an unexpectedly satirical turn. Donald's fear pushes him to move out to the wilderness, joining a survivalist camp that believes the end of society is near. It's an environment full of exaggerated personalities, conspiracy theorists, and people who've given up on the idea of community. The film uses this absurd setting to explore how fear can transform ordinary people into extremists. At its core, The Survivors is a comedy about human overreaction, about how we let fear drive us to ridiculous extremes when all we really need is understanding and trust. Robin Williams gives one of his most underrated performances here. He channels both his signature manic energy and a surprising emotional depth. You can see the early hints of the emotional range that would later define his roles in films like Good Morning Vietnam and Dead Poets Society. His character Donald is a man unraveling, but also searching for control in a world that feels chaotic. Every scene he's in bursts with unpredictable energy, blending slapstick humor with genuine vulnerability. Walter Matthau, in perfect contrast, is the calm center of the storm. His dry humor and steady presence make him the ideal counterbalance to Williams's nervous energy. Their chemistry is what makes the movie truly shine. Whether they're arguing about society trying to survive in the wilderness or facing the absurdity of modern fear, their dynamic feels real, raw, and constantly entertaining. Matthau's signature wit gives the film its grounded, relatable charm. He's the everyman who reacts to madness with weary resignation, reminding us all that sometimes the best way to survive is to laugh. As the story unfolds, the two men find themselves in a series of wild, unpredictable situations, from confronting the robber who started it all to dealing with eccentric survivalists who seem more dangerous than helpful. The film cleverly blurs the line between comedy and reality. It's funny because it's true. We've all seen how people can become obsessed with safety, mistrust, or self-defense when life gets uncertain. The Survivors exaggerates those fears, but it never loses sight of the human heart underneath. The direction by Michael Ritchie gives the film a rhythm that feels spontaneous and natural. Ritchie was known for blending satire with realism in films like Smile and The Candidate, and here he uses humor to dissect the anxieties of 1980s America, fears about unemployment, crime, and the future. Yet beneath the laughs, the film offers a surprisingly thoughtful commentary on how we respond to insecurity. Do we turn against each other, or do we find ways to laugh and connect? What's also interesting about The Survivors is how it avoids becoming just another buddy comedy. Sure, it's funny, there are plenty of memorable gags, misunderstandings, and verbal duels, but there's also a subtle emotional thread running through it. It's about two men learning how to face fear without losing their humanity. Donald's paranoia pushes him to isolation, while Sonny's practical wisdom reminds him and us that the world isn't always as hopeless as it seems. One of the most memorable stretches of the film takes place in the survivalist camp, where Donald dives headfirst into his new identity as a rugged individualist. Watching Robin Williams in full survival gear trying to adapt to the wild is both hilarious and oddly touching. He's a man trying to reclaim power in a world that took it away from him, and that desperation makes the comedy hit even harder. Meanwhile, Matthau's Sonny, dragged into the madness against his will, becomes the reluctant voice of reason. His reactions, dry, sarcastic, and always grounded, keep the movie balanced and human. There's a scene where the two men finally confront the reality of their situation, a turning point that reminds them and the audience that survival, it's about staying yourself. It's about not letting fear strip away your decency or your sense of humor. And that's where The Survivors becomes more than just a comedy. It becomes a reflection on human nature. By the time the story comes full circle, what stays with you isn't just the laughs, but the message beneath them. It's a story about friendship, resilience, and the absurd ways people cope with uncertainty. It's about how no matter how far we run, to the mountains, to self-defense classes, or to our own bubbles of fear, we still need each other to make sense of the world. The music, the pacing, and the dialogue all work together to create a light but meaningful tone. Even in its funniest moments, the movie never forgets the humanity of its characters. It's filled with witty lines, memorable exchanges, and small emotional moments that remind you that laughter can be a powerful way to heal fear. Robin Williams once said that comedy is acting out optimism, and The Survivors captures that perfectly. It shows that even when everything seems to fall apart, humor can be a form of survival. The film may not have been a huge commercial hit, but it's aged surprisingly well because of its themes. Fear, paranoia, friendship, these are universal, timeless ideas that still resonate today. So if you're in the mood for something lighthearted yet surprisingly deep, The Survivors is worth rediscovering. It's one of those overlooked films that remind us how laughter can coexist with reflection, how absurdity and truth often walk hand in hand, and above all, it's a celebration of human resilience, told through the lens of two unforgettable characters brought to life by two comedic legends. If you enjoyed this breakdown, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Yash Talks Cinema, your go-to channel for exploring the stories behind films that mix humor, heart, and timeless emotion, because sometimes the best survival skill isn't strength or strategy, it's the ability to